John Combest, are you going to St. Charles Christmas Traditions this weekend? Are you going to be there? Well, I see you with Jack Frost.
I don't think I'm going this weekend, but there's one more weekend after this one, correct?
No, it goes all the way to, matter of fact, this year it goes all the way through the 24th, which is a Sunday, because Christmas is on a Monday. So
You're right. So there's two more weekends then.
Well, actually, this weekend, this is counting tomorrow, 3 more weekends.
Okay, nice. Yeah. Oh, I'll definitely be down there.
Yeah, Christmas Traditions, it's really cool. And look up Jack Frost. Matter of fact, you know what? We have him on the air. I'll have him on the air on Westplex 107.1 this morning after 8 o'clock, but we've had him on the air for years, and he's an interesting guy. He's like the goodwill ambassador to the St. Charles St. Charles City Main Street area. He's very much involved with the Christmas Traditions, obviously, but then he does do a little bit of work on the, what they call it, man, my brain's gone already this morning. Boy, we're off to a great start,
Polar
aren't we?
Express.
No. Yeah, the Polar Trash Express. Where
Does he do the St. Charles Kwanzaa display?
No, there is no St. Charles Kwanzaa display
That you know of, Brad. They might advertise on Westplex 107.1. It starts December 26th, and I plan on. I think every day starting at Kwanzaa, we should highlight the special days of Kwanzaa.
Well,
I think that would be the right thing to do.
Not to be left out, we need to celebrate Festivus as well too, right?
Absolutely. Well, why wouldn't we, Brad? We're a very inclusive organization.
Man. Okay, that is John Combest. I'm Brad. Together we make, I don't know what we make. I was going to say, it's like with Shelley, I say she's Shelley, I'm Brad. Together we make BS. We make BJ. Oh, I shouldn't say that, should I? Anyway, John is
Blackjack. We make blackjack.
John is the guy who has his ear to the ground and knows everything there is to know about state politics and a lot of the muni politics as well, too. Every day for 22 years, he publishes the top stories that are all over the state. Could be in a newspaper, could be on a radio station, could be on a TV station, could just be on a blog or something like that. You can check it out at johncombest.com, COMBEST, johncombest.com. Top 3 this morning, John. What's going on in the state?
The top story today is yet another follow-up from something that we've discussed over the last few days, which is the radiation payments.
Yes.
For St. Louisans. Yeah.
That was big news yesterday.
So the latest is that, as Brad mentioned yesterday, and we talked about yesterday, funding for radiation victims in the St. Louis area has been stripped out of the conference committee bill. So in funding in the defense bill, you get the House committee and the Senate committee together, you get a conference committee, and that funding was stripped out. The recent development from yesterday is that nobody is explaining why. MissouriNet, which is based in mid-Missouri, reached out to U.S. Representative Sam Graves, who's on the committee, and Graves did not provide comment back about why that funding was stripped. Uniquely, starting on Wednesday night, Senator Josh Hawley says that he will do everything he can. He said he will go to the floor of the U.S. Senate as many times as it takes and essentially make as big of a stink as possible until this funding gets restored. Now, what's unclear to me, what I don't know, Brad, is exactly what the next steps are in terms of getting that funding restored, or if Senator Hawley was successful in pushing back, if he could get that funding restored back in the conference committee. I'm not sure about that.
And
go ahead.
I was going to say, that is a big deal for the St. Louis area, St. Charles County, the Westplex area, North City, North County. We don't talk too much about North City, but there were several places where there was nuclear waste in North City, but the majority of it ended up in just north of the airport and in Hazelwood, and I believe there might even be a little bit of it in Ferguson. Somebody told me that the other day, that there was some place over in Ferguson, but I know for sure in the area there just north of the airport. If you don't believe me, they're still working on it. All you have to do is just take McDonald East from Lindbergh, and when you come through a couple buildings there, on your right, you go through a curve, and on both sides of the road there, excuse me, my mind's, hold on a minute, about choked there. On both sides of McDonald, they are still doing remediation work. As a matter of fact, I didn't tell you this before, but as a younger man, I used to umpire baseball. And occasionally I do tournaments, and I think it was called the ABC League that was over there in that area. And I used to umpire on those very fields where all the nuclear radiation is.
So when you see old baseball clips of Earl Weaver or another manager kicking dirt on somebody, that was Brad. And Brad actually inhaled a lot of that dust, which explains a lot of what's going on with Brad
Yeah,
these
it
days.
explains a lot. No, but the whole thing with, and now what's so mysterious about this that nobody will say why this was taken out of the bill? Is anybody fessing up to this?
No, but I think it's not uncommon in situations like this that when there's a price tag that has a B that starts with a B, when it's billions of dollars, which is what this essentially this remediation and this fund would be. I mean, once it's the old cliche of a billion there, a billion here, a billion there, and pretty soon you're talking about real money.
Well, it used to be
like at a certain point, people just slash other people's priorities.
It used to be $1 million there and $1 million there. And
that is
now,
it's inflation. You're
it's
familiar with Biden inflation.
Right, now it's $1 billion there and $1 billion there. So, but what's crazy about this is, and sometimes I stand back and I look at things and I think to myself, okay, our government is spending money on this, to me, which seems frivolous. This is something that should be taken care of because, quite honestly, the government is responsible for this whole mess because they were the ones that started this project back. And I get it, it essentially ended World War II because the Japanese weren't going to give up, and essentially ended World War II by dropping the 2 nuclear bombs in the August of 1945. But yet, they still haven't done anything. Well, they have done things, but they have not completely taken care of the matter. And this has been going on since 1945.
Yeah.
Which, when you think about it, it's kind of crazy. Okay,
it's generations, yeah. So that's the number one story today. The number two story is one that's certainly been the top story on social media in Missouri political circles, which is the case of State Representative Sarah Unsicker. So Representative Unsicker represents the Shrewsbury area. She's a very progressive Democrat state rep. And she posted a photo over the weekend. By the way, she's also running for attorney general against another pretty far.
Oop, I think I lost John. John, are you there? John, are you there?
There's a guy named.
I'm
here.
You cut out for about 5 seconds. Pick it up where you were saying she's running against.
Yeah, she's running against another progressive Democrat for a Democratic primary for attorney general. And she posted a photo over the weekend of her having a basil lemonade, she said, with a couple right-wing, you could call them right-wing provocateurs. One of them has a local profile. He writes about a lot of federal issues. His name is Eric Garland. And then there's another guy named Charles Johnson, who is a nationally known right-wing activist. And it's kind of a bizarre story. The long story short is that yesterday, the leader of the House Superminority, a woman named Crystal Quaid, removed Sarah Unsicker from all of her committees. So Crystal Quaid, as Superminority leader, has the ability to add or remove members. So she's essentially punishing Sarah Unsicker for hanging out with these right-wing characters. Now, Crystal Quaid's side of the story is that one of the guys, the guy named Charles Johnson, has made statements that are deemed as anti-Semitic. People call him a Holocaust denier. Charles Johnson, for his part, points out that he's a federal informant and that it was his job to infiltrate right-wing organizations. So the whole thing is really bizarre. What it appears to be is the House Superminority leader punishing her fellow progressive Democrat for hanging out with a couple right-wingers and posting about it.
Well, John, I mean, everybody knows that's what you do. I mean, you just can't talk to those people on the other side of the fence, right?
You can't. Yeah. And what's funny, Brad, is that when you look at, and you can follow Sarah Unsicker on Twitter, which is where she does most of her activity and where she posted these pictures, she's essentially saying, I'm not going to change who my friends are, and I'm not going to pretend that I don't talk to people that have different ideological views than me. But it's a pretty bizarre situation in that Sarah Unsicker is also saying that she's worked with the FBI to inform them of some corruption. which leads, people to call her a conspiracy theorist. It's all pretty bizarre, and it's all Democratic intra-fighting right now.
Well, the crazy thing about this is you talk about the fact that essentially she's being punished by the Democratic leader, as you call it, the super minority leader,
Yep.
and she's being punished because she's talking. How dare her talk to someone who's a Republican? I think this whole thing was accelerated by Trump. Now, and I'm not saying him specifically, but how many times do you hear stories about, fights at Thanksgiving Day dinners?
Absolutely.
Where the matriarch or the patriarch of the family is one political leaning and everybody else in the family is the other, and it ends up, out in the backyard, fisticuffs and the whole bit. I just don't get it, I
mean, Brad, and we talked about this yesterday when it comes to campus protests. We have seen universities ban speakers and cancel events because that speaker supported President Trump.
Right.
And by association, if you support President Trump, then you are a white nationalist.
Right.
And that's the argument. And so that way you can say, hey, you would put that speaker, that general Republican speaker, in the same category as a KKK member.
Which they have done. And that's
absolutely they have.
And that's what.
So, and then you add to this, one of the accelerating elements to this is that because Sarah Unzicker is running for attorney general, she's running against someone, like I said, in the primary, who's also a progressive. So that candidate's supporters are going to seize on anything that Sarah Unzicker says.
Well, the crazy thing about this is you're starting to see the backlash. I don't know if you saw this yesterday from the national news, but the backlash against these three college presidents, the three women who gave, to me, which was unbelievable testimony where they wouldn't answer the question. And now the backlash is on them, where I read the story just this morning about I can't remember, was it Harvard or one of them, where some guy who's head of some hedge fund or something like that is pulling $100 million out of essentially what he was donating through the years to, I believe it's Harvard. I have to look at that again. And I'm thinking to myself, the crazy thing about this is you and I talked about this yesterday and this is what John Combest used to do. John used to be a guy who essentially worked with executives at the company he worked for, Monsanto and then Bayer, and prepared them for being in front of the press, correct?
Yep, that's exactly right.
But there comes a point when my opinion is they become overprepared and it backfires because of the fact that they just won't answer simple questions.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're wasting everybody's time if you come before, especially a congressional panel, and you don't say anything of substance.
Right, and it's all doublespeak. But man, I don't know. I mean, there's so many things you see. Especially on the California college campuses, anytime there was any kind of a Charlie Kirk or somebody like that who'd show up at one of the universities, it was like World War III.
Absolutely.
And it's to the point where it's like, okay, but yet someone who is on the other side of the equation, on the left side, could show up and be greeted by everybody. And it's almost to the point where if you saw, where was it in Portland, they had the thing where there was a group of of conservative right wingers who were doing some meetings out in a park, and they got attacked by the Antifa people. Yeah, there were several of them that were on video, where they would, the Antifa people would come and physically attack them, throw things at them, actually, bear spray them. I'm going like, I don't get this. This is just like out of control. But what do I know, right? I'm just a dumb.
Well, you know a lot, Brad.
I'm a dumb guy on a radio.
And by the way, you were right. The gentleman who's spoken up about this is Bill Ackman, who's a legendary investor.
Right.
And he's the one that's come out against University of Pennsylvania, against
UPenn.
Harvard.
That's right. UPenn. Yes.
And when it starts affecting pocketbooks, you're right though, Brad. I think there is among people that are a little left of center, they're starting to see whether it's Israel and Hamas or whether it's this kind of nonsense.
Well, but the sad part of this is, what's the endowment for Harvard? I mean, it's in the billions. I think it's multiple billions.
Oh, yeah.
In other words, that's what they got sitting in the bank, which is, I think, the same situation. Isn't WashU have like $1 or $2 billion in endowments or something like that?
There was one time when I was there, I know that the endowment was certainly higher than most Ivy League schools.
Let me take a look at this really quick. Okay, go ahead and do your third thing, and I'm going to look if I can find Washington.
The third story, which is really a Brad Hildebrand special, is that St. Louis on the Air, which, as Brad notes, is the only live, or it's the only local St. Louis public radio show that you can actually listen to on KWMU, had an interesting feature. The lead LGBTQIA asterisk group said that St. Louis had a perfect rating for LGBTQIA folks to live. However, another fringe real estate group came out and said, no, actually, St. Louis is terrible, and here's all the reasons why. So St. Louis on the air yesterday had an enlightening feature featuring a group that I didn't know existed, Brad. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, the Midwest Rainbow Research Institute. So hopefully this group is just based on, from their name, it sounds like they go out and investigate rainbows. So it seems like the kind of group that I want to go.
So in other words, one group is saying it's perfect. St. Louis is perfect for
the top-rated city in the country. That's right.
LGBTQIA. Another group says no, we're not. Is that what it comes down to?
Yeah. Another group says no, St. Louis is terrible, and that it's called clever real estate. And Brad, you've talked about this before a lot on Westplex 107.1. The idea of data journalism, and the idea of not only do you just take a bunch of statistics and make a story out of it, but if you're one of these consumer groups or you're a real estate group, you manufacture your lists every week and you attempt to get PR through that. So that's what this looks like. But St. Louis on the Air has quotes from folks from the St. Louis Queer Support Helpline. And then also, I don't know if you knew that this existed, Brad. The city of St. Louis has a LGBTQIA plus and arts liaison. So these individuals who are clear about their pronouns talk a little bit, they debate back and forth, and they also reflect, according to St. Louis Public Radio, on the 2023 Missouri legislative session and how legislators tried to ban transgender students participating in sports that match their gender identity, aka boys playing girls sports.
Man, I've got a little pushback from somebody earlier this week, and I'll tell you this story, which is sort of interesting. I got a little pushback because I've made the comment that every time I turn on NPR, vis-a-vis KWMU, St. Louis Public Radio here in St. Louis, there's some story about LGBTQIA, transgender, queer, something like that. And it's to the point where I don't listen to that station for that. And someone called me out and said, I won't say who this is, but they essentially said, that's terrible that you have a bias against that. And I said, no, you don't understand where I'm coming from. If I'm listening to a talk show, and for example, on this station, starting at noon, between noon and 3, we have a guy by the name of Eric Erickson. Yep. And Eric Erickson is a conservative guy. He's very much involved. I think at one point in time he was the head guy in Red State, if you know what that's all about. Eric goes into cooking sometime, okay?
Yep.
And when Eric starts talking about cooking, I hit the button.
Change the channel.
Right.
Change the channel.
And I'll give you another perfect example. I've listened to, Clay and Buck, the guys who took over for Rush Limbaugh. Travis Clay, or Clay Travis, I always get his name backwards.
Yeah.
His claim to fame is he started this website called Outkick, which was essentially a right-leaning sports site, sort of against ESPN, which turned out to be sort of a left-leaning sports site. Yep. And once again, when I'm listening to Clay and Buck driving around and he starts talking about sports, bang, I hit the button.
Yep.
Because
you don't care about Tennessee versus Alabama.
I don't care about sports. I don't care about cooking. I care about, current events, political things. That's what I care about. And that's the thing for me where with KWMU, it's to the point where it's not that I'm anti-LGBTQA. I'm going I don't listen for that. That has no interest to me whatsoever. And I guess even more so, if you look at cooking, obviously cooking is very mainstream. There's lots of people into cooking. You look at sports, I don't have to say anything more about that. There's tons of people into sports. But yet if you look at the LGBTQIA population in the United States, maybe 2-3%?
Right.
You know?
And so, what I would love to see, what you would never see, what somebody who had the time and the resources could do is go to St. Louis on the Air. You go through a year's worth of shows and you see how many minutes are dedicated to, what percentage of the stories are dedicated to LGBTQIA stories?
Well,
what percentage are dedicated to, about reparations and slavery? If you do that breakdown, you would be more likely to find adequate representation for stories about reparations, which you can make the argument that the black population in St. Louis City is quite high, And then, but if you compare that to what you're saying, Brad, the LGBTQIA asterisk population is far below how they're represented at St. Louis Public Radio.
Well, but the thing that gets me, and I agree with what you're saying, but take that one step further. They introduce a guest, and the guest sounds very interesting. And in 5 minutes into the interview with the guest, and they say, by the way, Miss So-and-so is trisexual, LGBTQIA, going, oh my God. Is there anybody you can interview who's straight? I mean, is there anybody?
And again, like, for example, the person that contacted you or other people that would be critical of this point of view would say that those people have been shut out of mainstream media, and therefore it is the obligation of a public radio station to disproportionately highlight people who have been historically excluded.
But see, 20 years ago, that would have been appropriate. 30 years ago,
sure.
40 years ago. We have the internet, right? And nobody is shut out of media because you can grab your phone, you can go anywhere.
Absolutely, you're exactly right, Brad.
You can take pictures, you can take video, you can do selfies, you can do stand on the street corner, you can do man on the street interviews, you can do everything. So it's not like there's not a platform for it. And matter of fact, one of the things that the very medium we're on right now is being denigrated is because people say nobody listens to radio anymore. That's BS. According to Nielsen, 92% of the adult population listens to radio at least once a week, which beats everything. But the perception is, but yet we are called legacy media and to a certain extent mainstream media, although I don't consider us mainstream media. We have to take a break. By the way, I'm doing my research here. Take a guess. I'm looking at it right now on the WashU's website. Take a guess what the endowment level is at Washington University.
I'm going to say a cool billion.
11.5 billion.
Wow.
It says
holy cow.
Now help me with this. It says endowment market value of is 629.23. Then below it says 12.5 billion, and that says MEP. What is MEP? Do you know what that is?
I don't know, but we can look it up during the break.
It looks, I see what I write down. It says manage endowment pool. So essentially they have an endowment of 11.5 billion and the managed endowment pool is 12.5 billion. And once again, this is right on their website. Market value as of 6/30/23. Think about how many kids they could put through school for free
if they chose.
If they decided just to run the endowment down. Let's say they're going to run it down half. They're going to run it down to $6 billion or $5 billion. Mm-hmm. How many kids could go to school at WashU?
We could get advanced degrees, Brad. You could add yet another advanced degree to your resume.
That's all I need. Okay, we have to take a break. We're long in this one, 7:25.